So díobh gach duine agus fáilte roimh arás chuig an srágarma What It Takes. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the UCD What It Takes Employability series. My name is Niamh, and I am part of the UCD Alumni Relations team. So this is our second episode of the Autumn 2021 series, focusing on what it takes to thrive in global teams. We'll be hearing from three stellar UCD alumni this evening. First, we'll have a presentation from Dr. Linda Yang, Programme Leader for the Intercultural Development Programme in UCD. Then we'll hear from Nicai de Guzman, who also goes by Maria, and who is a content marketer at Wolfgang Digital. Thirdly, we'll hear from Emmet Daniels, Business Development Representative at Hubspot. Afterwards, we'll have 15 minutes for audience questions, led by my lovely colleague here, Michelle Cohen, who is a careers consultant with UCD Careers Network. So be sure to drop any of your questions that you have into that Q&A button at the bottom, rather than the chat. So it's at the bottom of the screen, and then the speakers can answer as many of them as they can at the end of the session. Finally, this session is being recorded, as I said, so if you want to revisit it or if you're having any connectivity troubles tonight, you can always find it on the UCD Alumni YouTube channel starting from tomorrow. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Dr. Linda Yang.
Thank you so much, Niamh, for the introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone who are here and virtually joining this session with all of us. As Niamh introduced just now, that my name is Linda, and I'm actually originally from China, as I mentioned earlier on when you guys are coming in. And I actually worked in the UK for 10 years before I moved to Ireland 7 years. And my expertise in intercultural education, my research interests include intercultural competence, intercultural communication, and pedagogy. And it's absolutely great pleasure for me to be here to share some of my experience and views and insights on this very important and contemporary topic with everyone. I really hope you will enjoy the webinar. Now, so let me just share my slide. Can you see my slide? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Very good, thank you, Niamh. So I'm actually very active on LinkedIn, everyone. So feel free to add me on LinkedIn. So if you could just search Dr. Linda H. Yang, and then, just mention that we kind of met at the webinar today. That'd be great. So feel free to add me, okay? And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions after today's webinar. And as Niamh explained earlier on, I'm currently the program leader for the Intercultural Development Programme in UCD Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School. So in Smurfit, we call it ICD. So in the rest of my presentation, I will just use ICD. Every time when I say ICD, it means Intercultural Development Programme, okay? Now, let's continue. Next slide. Okay, right. So I think it is actually quite important for me to show you this culture at work, okay? This is a global survey. This is the most recent global survey on employers' views, right? On employers' views on the value of intercultural skills in the workplace. And this report, you can easily find it online from the British Council report, okay? It's not really long, but it's very, very important one. And really, this report looking at, I think it may be around 9 countries, including UK, USA, China, India, etc. So I'm going to show you some of the findings from this report. Now, okay. So this paragraph, I mean, like obviously, I'm just going to quickly read it, okay? This is from the summary of the report. Basically, the report shows, one of the key findings is that while formal qualifications and traditional skills remain important, what does that mean? For example, like if you're doing BA undergraduate degree in UCD or postgraduate degree in UCD in engineering or medicine or business, all of these are the formal qualifications, right? So you will become really have a really good understanding, knowledge, and skills that required to perform in this specific discipline. So these are called traditional skills, okay? Now, so obviously they're always very important. However, employers also say that nowadays in the 21st century, they're also looking for candidates who can navigate at workplace that transcends nationals and cultural borders, okay? Particularly for positions that require interaction with individuals and organizations from nationalities and cultural backgrounds different from their own. For example, one good example would be UCD. UCD is We can say it as a multicultural organization because we have students from more than 100 countries, right, represented on our campus. And we have faculty and staff who need to teach and support students from a diverse cultural backgrounds. And also at the same time, we need to work with each other. You know, the diversity within among all of us has been increasing, isn't it, within UCD? So this is the case not only in public sector, but also in NGOs and private sector. I always tell my students, the world is globalized. There's no way of going back, right? So let's continue. Let me show you some more findings from the survey, okay? So basically, as you can see, as the title here, an increasingly globalized workplace because of the development of technology, things like that. So is not uncommon, and actually it's really common for people to work with people or dealing with customers or establish partnerships, collaborations from people from diverse cultural backgrounds, right? As you can see from this bar chart showing on the screen, right? So basically, if you look at these different countries, so the dark blue, green color, dark blue, represent customers or partners. So frequency of employee interacting with customers and partners or colleagues overseas, showing type of interaction by country in percent, right? As you can see that in Indonesia is really, really high, right? So the light green, blue, whatever the color showing on your screen is the representing colleagues. So from all of these findings, you can see that it's actually pretty high. Now, US is low. However, we need to bear in mind that US is immigrant country. So within the country is very diversified already, okay? Now, let's move on to the next slide. So as next slide, as indicating, let's say, is the importance of intercultural skills at workplace, okay? So the importance of intercultural skills to organizations by country ranked by very important. This is a very, very interesting bar chart, right? So if you look at these 9 countries over here, so the light blue one represent very important, okay? Very important. So a lot of countries, so in Jordan, it's 95%. That's very, very important. Now, blue is fairly important. So if you add up these 2 colors together, meaning that most of the countries saying that is actually very important. Now, the gray color indicating is neutral or unimportant. But what's very interesting is that coming from China, I'm originally from China. I was born in China, grew up in China, finished my undergraduate in China. And then China is basically maybe a little bit less than 70%, 69% of the employers saying that is very important. However, China as the fastest growing economy in the world, I believe if they're going to do the same survey 5 years later, the answer might be different. So I would anticipate, a lot more employers would be saying that it's very, very important, right? Now, okay. So let's go to the next slide, okay? So the next slide, what the next slide is showing is that the business benefits of employees having intercultural skills, right? So this slide is very interesting. Basically, what it's showing, right, is that, okay, so for 3 different industries, NGOs, public sector, and private sectors. So basically, what are the benefits for the employees to have intercultural skills? If you look at the gray one, the gray line, okay, is the private sector. It's like private business sector. The biggest benefits is bring in new clients. Obviously, kind of makes sense, isn't it, right? So, maybe your service or your product, people from diverse cultural backgrounds will be able to use your service or buy your product. Now, so the biggest benefits for public and NGO sectors are able to work with diverse colleagues, okay? So better teamwork, better productivity, better service. Now, so what about the risks? Okay, what about the risks associated with, for example, based on these employers, based on employers' views, what's going to happen if your employees don't have or lack of intercultural skills? Again, in private sector, as the gray line shows, that it's a loss of clients. Okay, you are going to lose your business. You're going to suffer. You're going to lose money, basically, right? And for public and NGO sectors, would be conflict within teams. Personally, I think these are really, really useful and very, very important findings. Now, so now I'd like to just bring in this concept of intercultural competence, okay? So in the first half of my presentation, we already established, based on the findings from the global survey, is really, really important from employers' point of view for their employees to have intercultural skills. Now, so if we look at all the literature, right, in terms of intercultural skills, there are so many different words and phrases people came up to describe, what these skills are. So you might have come across the phrase like cultural intelligence or global competency, or the one that's showing on the screen, intercultural competence. Basically, they're very, very similar concept, okay? So in SMERFIT, we use the word intercultural competence. It's because it emphasizing on, interaction, mutual understanding, and inclusiveness. There's nothing wrong with other words, but this phrase is the one that we choose to use in SMERFIT school. So if you look at the concept of intercultural competence, there are two layers, okay? One is global intercultural competence, meaning that for someone who has global intercultural competence, you are able to work and interact effectively with people from across diverse national cultures, okay? So for example, in the case of a SMERFIT school, we have students from more than 64 nationalities this year, right? So which means that for our students who are, who have a strong intercultural competence, they're able to work in multinational student groups, okay? Now, so in the case of the company, for example, you might need to relocate to a new location, right? Or you might be needing to dealing with clients from a different national cultural backgrounds. So in order to do that effectively, you will need global intercultural competence, okay? Now, so there's a common misunderstanding among people in terms of, oh, you know what? Intercultural competence is about working with Chinese, working with Irish, with the Indians, with the Germans, right? It's not just about national cultural differences. There's another layer of intercultural competence, is what we call domestic intercultural competence, meaning that you can actually work effectively with people from the same country, but with diverse cultural backgrounds. Let's just take Ireland as an example, right? I mean, like, first of all, you have even within Ireland, people from Dublin and outside of Dublin, even within Dublin, you might have different accents, and also people, there's a gender difference, there's age difference, maybe different religions, all of that. And if you look at domestic team, like even if people from the same nationality, however, you have personality differences, different approach to problem solving, etc. Okay, so that is what we call domestic intercultural competence, meaning that you are able to work with people from the same country but diverse backgrounds. Okay, I hope I clarify this concept now. So which means that if you think about it, everybody needs intercultural competence, whether you are working with people from the same cultural background or a different national cultural background, okay? Just to illustrate this definition a little bit clearer. Now, so there are really many definitions in terms of, competency-based, like CQ, like cultural intelligence, global competence, intercultural competence. So if you look at all the competency-based model that there exist nowadays in the literature, all of them, they have something in common, meaning that no matter how people define these models, they always have three components. First, and the most important one is motivation. Motivation meaning that it's your attitude. That sets the foundation of everything. And the attitude, one part of the attitude would be open-mindedness, okay? Open-mindedness and curiosity, right? So I'm open to same or different views, new experience, things like that. And curiosity is basically, I'm very curious, in terms of, like you probably have a different view. Why is that? I'm always curious in learning more about people who appear to be different from me. It's not just about national difference. We already established the one, haven't we, right? So it can be gender, age difference, way of thinking, for example. That's the motivation, okay? A second component would be knowledge and skills. So these has two kind of layers, right? One is that you really need to have a good knowledge about yourself, right? I think this is the most difficult bit, actually, because culture is invisible. Culture is unconscious. Most of the time, we don't even think about it, right? For example, in Ireland, that's what I picked up, right? In Ireland, you go to your someone's house, would you like a cup of tea, right? So you need to say no twice at least. I was told by my students, right, to be polite so that people will offer you again, right? So that is really that is a good knowledge in terms of the culture that you are dealing with. This is about knowledge about the other people. However, knowledge about ourselves, this is very, very important and very hard to do because we don't consciously think about it. That's just the way, we do things around here. So then, this is very important for us to be self-aware in terms of, okay, this is how I want to do things and this is why I want to do things in this way, right? So knowledge and skills of yourself and the other person or the organization or the culture you're dealing with. The last one is behavior. So no matter what kind of attitude you have and knowledge, skills you have, you need to be able to act on it. Okay, you need to be able to act effectively or communicate effectively. Right? Okay, now let's go to the next slide. So this is actually a framework of the ICD program that I've been delivering. And the reason why I'm showing you this framework, because I think this framework is actually really can effectively show everyone in terms of what I mean by the important skills, right? So the important skills that are really, really valued by the employers nowadays. So the ICD program framework, right? As you can see from the flower framework showing on the screen here. So the core is intercultural competence that I already explained earlier on. Now, so there's overlapping. So intercultural competence overlap. There's significant overlap between intercultural competence and the 11 other set of key 21st century skills. For example, communication. So communication is one of them, right? Adaptability, that is the word come up a lot. If you look at the job adverts, the key qualities employers are looking for: global mindset, critical thinking, creativity, conflict management, listening and observing, problem solving, decision making, emotional intelligence, and teamwork. Okay, so these are all 12 sets of really, really important skills. Now, so obviously the ICD program is designed to develop our students, ability in this area. So before I actually invite Maria, Nicai, actually, I love calling her Maria, but she prefers Nicai. Nicai is a beautiful name. So before I invite Nicai and Emmet to share their personal experience in terms of how the intercultural competence and intercultural skills have helped them, not only as a student in Smart Face School, but also at workplace, I think it is important for me to explain a little bit more about the ICD program so that you can understand a little bit more in terms of the background, right? So the ICD program is actually a kind of a professional training program, so the Smart Face School is the only school that offers this systematic training actually to our students. So Nicai, sorry, Nicai actually completed the advanced ICD program in 2019. So she's from the batch of 18-19, and Emmet completed 2 years ago, okay, from marketing practice, and both of them have already qualified for advanced intercultural development program. So congratulations again, guys. Okay, a lot of hard work has gone into that. So as you can see that the bottom 3 benefits for this program for students is personal growth, because if we think back in terms of the findings from the global survey, okay. So as I said that things are very different now. The world is very, very globalized, and we need this kind of skills, right? So which means that the program, the 3 key outcomes, one is to really help our students with their personal growth, help them to achieve academic excellence. As I mentioned, we have 64 nationalities in Smart Face School. Working in groups is one of the most commonly used, let's say, teaching activity that we use in business school, which is great because students have the first-hand experience of working in multinational groups, multinational teams, and by developing their intercultural competence, help them to really work better, in a student group as well, because most of them is graded, right? Last one is to enhance their global employability. Now, so that is the background of the ICD program. So I think that, I think the most juicy bit would be coming in for you guys to listen, would be really listen to Nicai and Emmet's first-hand experience as a student to start with, and also as someone who has been working in very diverse teams, okay, both in person and online, and through their first-hand experience, how by developing the intercultural skills have helped them not only getting the job, but also apply it in the working place, okay? So that's all from me now. And Nicai, I'm going to hand it over to you now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. Yeah, I think if you're from a Hispanic culture, like all the girls are named Maria, so I prefer not to call myself Maria because there are 10 other girls in my class who are named usually Maria. I prefer my nickname, which is Nicai. And let me start my presentation now. Introduce myself. I'm Nicai. I graduated from UCD in 2020. I started in 2019, originally from the Philippines. Like Linda said, I worked as a TV journalist there, 4 years of sponsored program. I also wrote for several digital publications, Entrepreneur, Esquire. I had a very two-pronged career, I suppose. After media, I actually entered the digital advertising world. I worked with several clients from around the globe before coming here to Ireland to study in Smurfit. So yeah, as I mentioned, from a very early age, actually, I was a youth reporter for a UNICEF-sponsored show called Kabataan News Network or Youth News Network, and this exposed me to different cultures early on. As obviously, I had to interview delegates or public figures from different countries, and even international celebrities. And I kept working in this field of media even after university. And I suppose that exposure did help me a bit in solidifying my confidence in dealing with people from different backgrounds. When I entered the advertising industry, I also had to work with international clients. I mentioned like Under Armour Southeast Asia, Pernod Ricard, as you know, Jameson is based here, and also our agency had to deal with other international agencies as well. And this was actually my first exposure in dealing with international cultures in a business sense, which is different when you're wearing your journalist hat. Obviously, there's a difference in like power dynamics because on one hand, you're the one asking questions. It's kind of like you have the power. But if you're dealing with a client, like an international client, you're kind of at their mercy. So I actually found myself like being nicer to them, I suppose, in that type of situation. Uh, and yeah, then I went to Smurfit, as I mentioned, and this time I took the ICD program that Linda mentioned, and that definitely laid the foundation that I was missing with my past cultural kind of exchanges. So even if I did have the professional experience handling international clients or interviewees, it was like I was going by instinct then, but with this program and the readings that Linda gave us, I found a method or a solid foundation on relating to people. An example, of course, is the discovery that they are high or low context culture. So I'll send a link to that later on. And when I was working with different, teammates in school, for example, say, I have a groupmate from China and I know, or Japan, and they have a very high context culture. And these are cultures in a nutshell where you have to kind of dig deeper or there may be layers to the meanings of what they're saying. So I have to be sure when dealing with these types of classmates that I'm getting exactly what they mean so we can work more productively in groups. And I'd like to think this actually worked out well for me as evidenced by one of my groups winning our final project for one of our classes. And that's the four of us over there where we're actually featured in the school website. So pretty nice. As well, I'm still friends with all of my group mates. So I think that's a pretty good indicator that I related to them very well, not to brag. But yeah, as I said, it made me more confident in terms of relating to others, given my new understanding. I participated more, I did volunteer work with other courses, with other kind of cultures. And I actually wrote a survival guide or a survival kit for the new batch that I sent on to the new batch. But sadly, that actually didn't include lockdown, which happened the year after. And that brings me to my next point and also my next phase in life. Which is I started working in Wolfgang Digital, one of Ireland's well-known and multi-awarded agencies. I actually started working right after school, so it was several months before lockdown, and I got to experience the awesome culture. And to be fair, when they did see my ICD certification, they did ask about it, and I really thought that it gave me an edge over the other candidates. Again, due to the nature of our workplace, we have like a lot of clients internationally. We also work with different people in the office from different cultures. And speaking of culture, one of the things that make us productive and really excel and win awards is the international nature of our workplace. At least that's what I like to think. As I mentioned, we have colleagues from all over the world. That's actually an example of a welcome slide that we give to our clients to introduce ourselves and the languages of the people that they're working with. So we have, Greek, German, Romanian, Italian, Mexican, Chinese, Indian, so many more working on different accounts. And I suppose you may be familiar already that there are studies that saying, ideas, collaboration, it's really better. It's real. People are more productive if you're from different backgrounds. And of course, that poses challenges sometimes. But yes, we'll give an example. There are clashes that happens, of course, if people from different cultures work together, maybe you get an email, that may seem a bit rude or very direct. But before reacting, of course, like I stop myself and I remind myself that, okay, this person is from this type of background or culture, and it makes sense that they're reacting this way. So, it's really just taking a step back and kind of reminding myself that. Another experience would be when we were pitching for a client, I take into account that, they're from a low context or maybe high context culture. and this is how I should approach it. And of course, we actually won clients this way. And just a final note about the pandemic, since I got to experience, again, working with my team online and offline, there really is a huge difference. Of course, it's just harder to connect to people, seeing them just on screen. I'm sure you guys can relate to this. There are like nonverbal cues that you're not seeing there, that they're maybe missing there. And it's just harder, of course, to like figure out how to relate to them. I'm sure you all can attest to that as well. But yeah, I think the advice I can give there is like what my company did. We tried to find ways outside work or have like bonding moments, I suppose, where we really get to know each other, introduce each other, and get to know different backgrounds as well and different interests. Again, it's really not just cultures, like interests also bonds people. So, we have kind of like bonding sessions in that case. Yeah, and just again, like kind of like summary of kind of my learnings, I suppose, during the pandemic is that I was able to use my intercultural kind of like knowledge and cultural sensitivity when I was working during this really hard time, and this was for everyone as well. And really that kind of thing, just taking a step back every time I communicate and relate to everyone. Yeah, it gets easier every time that you kind of like consciously remind yourself that, yeah, take a step back. What's their background? What's their culture? How do we relate to them? It's just something that becomes second nature after a while. And yeah, so as their connection starts with understanding. And I hope that's something that everyone, that's like one takeaway that you get after this webinar. And yeah, we're still growing. So I'm expecting to know more people from different cultures. We actually have like job openings. So if you're interested, yeah, go check out our website, Wolfgang Digital. I hope that's not too commercially, but yeah, thanks again for listening to my story. I'll take questions after, and I'll send that link about like high context, low context, kind of in a nutshell, and some of the articles I wrote as well. And I think now it's Emmet's turn, so I'll pass you over to Emmet.
Thank you very much, Nicai, and thanks, Niamh and Linda, for the introduction as well. Can we see my hometown compile on the screen?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Cool. Thanks very much, guys. My name is Emmet. I'm from a small village in County Wexford called Campile. I've been to UCD for a number of years. I did my undergrad in Commerce International with Spanish. As part of that, I spent a year in Valencia in Spain, which was really cool. After that, I went to Smurfit. I completed the MSc in Marketing Practice, and we had an interesting experience. It was 2020 when I graduated. So we did half the year in person, half the year virtual, which is absolutely standing to us now. As you can see, I'm in the office here at the moment. So I'm kind of in the office 2 or 3 days a week. So this kind of hybrid model that we had in Smurfit is standing to us now as well. I also did the ICD program, the Intercultural Development Programme, as part of my degree. As you can tell from listening to Linda, it was one of the highlights of the week every week as well. I've had a pretty different experience to Maria in life. Maria is from the Philippines, has worked all over the world, studied all over the world, really cool stories. I am from rural Ireland. Pictured on screen is where I'm from. Now, I have to say, I haven't done Campile justice here. It's a particularly dreary day. It's a few years old, so it's not a great picture of Campile. When the sun is shining, it looks a lot nicer. And there's some lovely beaches around as well. So bear in mind, it doesn't do Campile justice. But the point I want to make is it's quite a monocultural place. Pretty much when I was growing up, everyone looked like me, sounded like me, came from a very similar cultural background to me. So intercultural competence didn't necessarily need it to get by in Campile is the point I'm trying to make. Let's see, it was only when I got to UCD that I started to have the opportunity to interact on a meaningful level, at least, with people from different cultures. I got to work on group projects with them. I got to socialize with them and got to become friends with them. And it was then it was when I got to Smurfit, I started to realize the essential skills that make up intercultural competence are ones that employers really value. And those skills not only give you a competitive edge when applying for jobs, but also give you a competitive edge in terms of becoming a top performer in your job when you get it. So when I've been interviewed for jobs, and indeed my job here at Hubspot right now as a business development representative, I was getting asked lots of behavioral questions. Name a time when you did this. and so forth. And I was able to give practical examples of the types of diverse teams I worked in, the skills I was able to develop while doing so. Things like the ability to communicate effectively with different cultures, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, all part of the framework that Linda has spoken about, are all things employers ask me about and really value. There are also skills that can be worked on, that I did work on during my time at Smurfit, and I continue to work on here at Hubspot. Cool. So moving on to the second question which Linda posed to us, which is, are intercultural skills important working in teams, both in person and virtual? Short answer, yes. We wouldn't have a webinar if they weren't, would we? So I work in Hubspot in sales, okay? So I'm speaking on the phone, on Zoom to people pretty much all day, every day. My first role in Hubspot was in both English and Spanish. So I'd be speaking to anyone from an English or Spanish speaking country whose time zone overlapped with mine. So in the morning, I'd be mainly speaking to people from Ireland, the UK, Spain, the Nordics, even some hardworking people from Australia who'd still be online at 9 or 10 o'clock their time. And then in the afternoon, the Americas would come online. So I'd be speaking to people from the USA, Central America, Paraguay, Chile, South America, all these really cool places too. So as you can imagine, communication across different cultures becomes a key component of my job. And just to refer to the slide here, I also had a very diverse team at one point in HubSpot. I had an American manager who only came online at 2 o'clock my time, so I was able to get away with murder until 2 o'clock. And my team was made up of people from France, Singapore, Australia, Mexico, and the USA. Okay, so because of the 21st century skills that are required for jobs like this, intercultural competence is something that HubSpot and many other companies actively seek in job applicants. It's more of a need to have right now than a nice to have. Cool, and I'm going to finish on an example. I've got a cup of tea on screen here, and this example actually comes from the Irish person being asked to do a cup of tea. And I got this example from a video which I watched recently, which I actually sent to Linda as well. It was about a German person and an Irish person being asked, would they like a cup of tea? So when the German person asks the Irish person, would they like a cup of tea? The Irish person inevitably says no. And the German person says, okay, you're not getting a cup of tea. When the Irish person asks the Irish person, would they like a cup of tea? The Irish person says no, but ends up with a cup of tea after like 4 or 5 times of saying, no, I won't have one, I won't have one, I won't have one, before eventually saying, yeah, go on, I'll have one, only if you're putting one on for yourself. So in Ireland, when someone asks you, do you want a cup of tea, particularly people you don't know, but to be honest, most people, it's kind of rude to say yes the first time, particularly people you don't know. In Germany, it's not, or in more direct cultures, it's not. Even if you really want a cup of tea, the Irish person will say no, at least 3 to 4 times before ending up with a cup of tea. In other words, in Ireland, we have a very indirect style of communication, and in Germany, and other cultures too, they have a more direct style of communication. The Irish person's first reaction is, why didn't the German person make me the cup of tea? That's quite rude, I'm a bit shocked. But one of the things Linda taught us on the ICD program was to not assume bad intent. That's something that really has stuck with me. The German person has literally no bad intentions by not giving the Irish person the cup of tea, even though because they said no. There's absolutely no bad intention there. And that not assuming bad intent becomes really important when working in intercultural teams. I work with people whose communication styles are very different to mine. I have to understand that, recognize that, and appreciate that. And when you do understand, recognize, and appreciate that, you become a much more effective team member across cultures. So with that, I'm going to finish up, and I'm going to, I believe, pass over to Michelle for the Q&A.
That's right. Thanks very much, Emmet. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Thanks very much. That's so interesting. Emmet, I wrote down, don't assume bad intent. And it's so true, just because we mightn't be aware, but just even bringing that knowledge to bear, that's really, really good. And I love that you brought in your interview and that you had so many examples from Smurfit and that you could bring to life in your interview. That's fantastic. I imagine that seeing that course really probably brought you to the top of the pile, and certainly gave you a competitive edge in a competitive recruitment market. So that's really good. So there are some questions popping in. Maybe Linda, I'll come to you first. People are certainly very interested about this topic and learning more. And I know that you have some resources that you're going to share at the end, but if you have even had a book recommendation or further reading for current students and even HR employers who, and professionals who might be tuning in and would like to read a little bit more about this space.
That's no problem. Thank you, Michelle. So I would recommend 2 books to start with. I mean, there are so many books out there, so if you're a bookworm, get ready to spend some money on it. Now, so I think the 2 books I would recommend, one is, like Hofstede is one of my favorite authors, so he's a psychologist, and a lot of the cultural dimensions that I use are from his research. Okay, so his research is not the only, like a research the ICD program is based on, but I would recommend you to read his books as a starting point, guys. Okay, so the first one is a little bit old, but I think it's good. It's Culture's Consequence. So I'm just gonna kind of paste this in the chat. Okay, in the chat. So this one book is a little bit old, but I think it's really, really good starting point. The second one is very thick book, but I think that if you can manage to read it and finish it, absolutely, is very useful. It's called Cultures and Organizations by Hofstede as well. Okay, so later on, I'm going to send you the name of the book as well. And I will think of some articles, maybe easier readings for you guys, because the second book that I recommend is like this thick, right? Yeah, so I'm going to think of some like maybe some book easier to read, and then you can apply the learning immediately. I think that would be very helpful for everyone. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle.
Thanks. And Linda, one more question for you, if you don't mind. It was great to see a global study and kind of capture the feedback there. And are you aware of any other surveys that capture EU statistics?
Not really. Not really, but I can dig a little bit further though. But in this particular study, I think the only country participated in EU is UK, I think. Yeah.
That's right.
I don't know how they selected the countries actually, you know what I mean? But I think that because this study is the most recent one. But I think that's a really, really good question. So I can look into it, and if I find any relevant studies and everything, I'll share with you guys. Absolutely, that's a really good question.
That's great. You see, you've sparked so much curiosity now. People want to read more, so it's really good.
Great.
So, and I'll maybe Emmet and Nicai, I'll mention this to you guys. Are there common methods of communication that you found like work across various cultures? And this might be someone maybe that's new to an organization, and that's, in your experience, something that you found that works quickly and easy as a method of communication. Nicai, I might ask you first, and then maybe Emmet, your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. If there is a common ground in terms of like communication, and I suppose in that sense, we have to kind of like look into the field of psychology, like for example, doing favor for other people, or even I know there are different books like Power and all of those things about like the human psychology, and we're kind of actually more interconnected than what we think. Again, this is kind of like the unity and diversity kind of talk. So I think my general rule is just be nice. Don't be a jerk when trying to talk to people. I saw another comment in there about what is it? It's more about if you're going to have other cultural traits, finding balance, respecting the individual. I think that's another point that I'd like to make. And though that I've mentioned a lot of times that, I have to stop myself for a bit, like what's the culture of that person, what's the background of that person before talking to them. You have to take it into like individual experiences into account as well, because I think I told Linda this before, like I don't think I represent the studies. Like the Philippines is like, we're high context culture, there's like really, and the power dynamics is there as well. But I feel like, again, because I was exposed to a lot of cultures at a very young age, so I don't think I fit into the mold of like someone coming from East Asia, for example. So again, look, like different people are, react differently to different things based on their own kind of like individual kind of like collective experience. But yeah, again, if you look into the field of psychology, there are many different ways that you can connect to people.
That's
and
great.
very basic ones like, yeah, do them a favor, ask them questions, and just get to know them, I suppose. Again, and be nice. Just be nice.
Keep it simple. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
great. And maybe, so Nicai has given a comprehensive answer to that. So I have another question, Emmet, for you, if that's okay. And because you mentioned, I suppose, the interview piece, somebody is asking, so they're a little bit terrified, they're saying, to hear that this cultural competency is a must rather than a nice to have. And I know from my own experience, it is something that employers are really looking at and looking for evidence in applications and at interview. So if somebody is kind of feeling right now, looking at applications that maybe they don't have much experience to demonstrate this, would you have any, even from your own experience, any tips or hints that you could give to kind of help someone at the moment who's thinking of that?
Do the ICD program with Linda is one. Let me think. Yeah, no, you're right though. And in the interview process, it was really important. I had my ICD badge, or I had a part in my CV for the ICD program, and it was something employers did ask me about. So I gave plenty of examples from the ICD program as well. To the person who's terrified, I would say these are skills you can work on. It's not something you're born with, and that's something we want to get across here. They are something you can work on, and I continue to work on. I mean, I don't think employers are expecting people to have Linda's knowledge going into a job, but it is something you can work on, and being open to working on it is important to you, and is important as well. And communicating that you are open to working on it is what I would say to that person.
Very good. And
sorry, Michelle.
Yeah.
I just want to quickly follow what Emmet and Maria said, if that's okay.
Of course.
I think I can understand because intercultural competence, intercultural skills are relatively new, let's say, because 20 years ago, people are thinking about, qualifications. If you have got, like MA degree in business, and then you are sorted. If you're MBA, that's it, right? But then people realize that, emotional intelligence is very important. Okay, so we need people who are emotionally intelligent. And nowadays, people are talking about, oh my goodness, intercultural competence, right? Because as we said, that because of this globalization, and it's become so frequent for people to interact and doing business, with people from diverse background. So I feel that, just look at Emmet and Nicai, what they have shared is that one thing which is very important is your attitude. Is you're open to learn, right? So learning is like, learning never stops. So I think the attitude is the most important thing. And intercultural development is a lifelong journey. Like both of them said that, okay, so ICT give them a kickstart, but they're still developing it while at work. Now, for the person who is a little bit nervous, I would say that, don't worry about it, because as if you could remember, I'm going to send you a copy of the program framework anyway. So that would give you guys a really good framework to work on, actually, if you want to work on it. Now, so the core is intercultural competence, but there are a lot of overlapping with other skills. So let's just take communication as an example. If you want to demonstrate, right? I mean, no matter what kind of job you do, you need to be a great communicator, right? So in terms of, okay, so then meaning that, okay, so being aware of your own communication styles and, find evidence to demonstrate how you can communicate effectively with people from diverse backgrounds. Bearing in mind, when I say diverse backgrounds, it's not just about national cultural differences. Obviously, if you have that experience, that would be great. But if you don't, same country, that's fine. Because the way you communicate, let's say, with people from different gender, age, different, even academic background, you need to adjust your different communication styles. Does it make sense, right? So I think that there's nothing to worry about, because I think a lot of you have a lot of experience. But the key issue is that how to articulate it, have a good awareness. Obviously, proper training obviously is a plus, but if you don't have the opportunity to do that, I think a conscious effort, be prepared to have a lifelong learning journey. That's very, very helpful. And also one more point about the the balance between the national culture, right, and the individual. So to be honest, I'm personally so proud of Emmet and Nicai, because otherwise we wouldn't have invited them. They are two very exemplary top top SmartFace students who completed the advanced ICT program. So the thing is that like Emmet said, that always assume good intention, meaning that stereotype or generalization, national cultural dimension can give you a good prediction. For example, Michelle, we haven't met in person, but you're Irish. I'm thinking that, ooh, like when I offer her tea, she might, say no, but I'm going to insist, right? However, I won't assume all the Irish will do that. You know what I mean? So the national cultural dimension will give you a good prepare yourself mentally in terms of, okay, I might approach her like that. However, always be ready to be flexible and adjust your way of communicating, your way of interacting with others based on that individual. That is open-mindedness. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, very good. Well, I hope that has reassured the person that asked. And I know the ICD program obviously operates in Smurfit at the moment, but there's so much going on in campus with volunteers, societies, clubs. There's so much opportunity to develop all those competencies. So don't worry if you're thinking that program's just for Smurfit. There's so many opportunities as well to gain lots of skills on the Belfield campus too. So that's really good. And just to say, yeah, that's Emmet and Nicai, certainly brilliant ambassadors for the ICD program and for Smurfit. And just somebody was asking, and I suppose maybe again a little bit around the trepidation of maybe joining a big international firm, but based obviously maybe in Dublin, like Hubspot is. But I maybe I shouldn't assume, but they do a lot of training as well and onboarding and induction around the cultural awareness piece. So it's not that somebody has to be really nervous and apprehensive. Was that both your experience in Wolfgang Digital and Hubspot? Nicai, I might put it to you first.
Yeah, exactly. You're right, Michelle. We did have kind of like a buddy system when you're being onboarded, and it doesn't really have to be like someone from your own culture. It could be like anyone. I know we have like a committee that kind of like ensures like wellness and like camaraderie around the team, so that really helps as well. And again, as I mentioned, like pre-pandemic, hopefully we're gonna have it again like after lockdown and restrictions. We do have like a lot of events that foster bonding. And just getting to know like one another beyond just work, kind of like culture day. I know we were kind of planning like a food day where like everyone kind of brings in like food from their culture. So little things like that is really good. And I know like a lot of offices here in Ireland, or even like back in Manila when I was working, we do have kind of like days and kind of like activities like that. So yeah, like don't be worried.
Yeah, there's lots of informal
Exactly.
ways of learning as well. And is that the same, your experience kind of in that induction phase, Emmet, that there was lots of kind of warm introductions and ways of learning that cultural piece?
Absolutely, absolutely. We had a full month of induction before we even started our jobs, and I mean, developing intercultural skills was part of that. And it's something we continue to develop. We have like bi-weekly DI&B discussions, which is diversity, inclusion and belonging discussions. They happen bi-weekly, so like a kind of a round table between our team. So it's something we continue to work on as well.
Brilliant. Okay, so that's really good. So kindly, somebody has also shared a resource in the chat, in the Q&A, and in the chat as well. So there's lots of sharing going on. And Linda, thank you so much. You have shared content, and I know you have more to share as well at the end. So it's great. There's certainly an awful lot of curiosity about this and interest. So certainly I'll be reading into this a little bit more. I'm just conscious of time. So I know Niamh has a closing and some more information that she wants to share. But Emmet, Nicai and Linda, thank you so much for such an informative talk. Really, really interesting. And I think our audience got a lot from it. So really appreciate your time this evening. And Niamh, I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Linda, Nicai and Emmet, for those fantastic presentations. There's so much information there, and I'll also be reading up on all of it as well. And thanks, of course, to you, Michelle, for your steer on the audience questions. It's always fantastic to have you. Just a couple of things. So remember, if you're a student or if you've graduated from UCD in the past 2 years, you can take advantage of the many events and consultant advice from the UCD Careers Network. So there's a link going into the chat there now. And of course, thanks to all of you who tuned in this evening. You can connect with Linda, Nicai and Emmet on LinkedIn after this session. So the links to their profiles are being posted in the chat. I think Linda's was posted in there earlier as well. So feel free to connect with them. You'll also be able to find the slides from today's presentations as well as numerous other resources in the What It Takes Resource Hub on the UCD Alumni Network. So that link is also going in the chat there, and you can sign up if you're already not signed up. And then just a few other things before we go. You might also be interested in our next What It Takes webinar, What It Takes to Network Like a Pro, with Siobhan McKenna and Martin Russell. So that'll be on Wednesday, November 3rd at 1 p.m. during the day. You can sign up for this at the link going in the chat now. That will be our last What It Takes webinar for 2021, but we will be back in the new year with some more excellent speakers again. And then finally, this series aims to support our UCD community with career development opportunities. But I'd also like to mention our commitment to supporting our students through the COVID crisis too. Generous funds have been raised thanks to alumni and friends of UCD like you. But if you'd like to support our efforts to provide urgent financial and mental health support to those students who need it most, you can visit the link that's going in the chat now as well. So that's all from us. Thank you so much for joining this evening, and hopefully we'll see you next time on November 3rd. You're Mina Maglev, and take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.